Hey, so today we're going to be building a JSON parser on the command line. And the first thing that we need to do is add serde JSON. So cargo add serde JSON, and this will install the necessary crates to serialize and deserialize. That's what serde is. So it's serialize, deserialize. And there's a serd package that I'm maybe pronouncing that wrong. There's a serd package that just handles the serialization, and then there's other packages that bundle the one for JSON or the one for CSV or different formats. So the one we want is JSON. Then we're going to need the environment package inside standard, and also the file system package. So I had to figure all of this out first, so it's all commented out, and then I'm going to introduce it slowly. So the first step is to create an array of the variables that are being collected on the command line and store it in a immutable variable that we're going to call arg. Vector is basically an array if you're coming from a TypeScript JavaScript background, as I am, so a lot of my comparisons are going to be to TypeScript concepts. But confusingly, there are also arrays in Rust, but they are fixed arrays. Like you can't adjust the amount of items in them, so if you want an array that you can adjust the amount of items in, it's called a vector, and this is a vector that contains strings, items that are strings. Now, when pulling information off of the arguments variable from the environment package, when we're pulling off these variables, the first argument is always going to be the path to this program. So so cargo run and then thing. Anything after cargo run is the first argument. So if we have thing2, that would be the third argument, since the first argument is the actual path to this program. So what we're checking is that there are two arguments. First would be the path to the program, and the second would be, in this case, thing, the value that we're going to pass in. And what we want to do is write cargo run and then the path to the JSON file that we want to parse. Now I've created two JSON files, a bad JSON file and a good JSON file. Sorry, let me pull these up. Good JSON, and then I got some bad JSON so we can see if it validates and catches the errors. And I'll link to the GitHub repo, and you can just copy this JSON if you want, or you can just make up your own JSON. So we want to know if there's there's exactly two arguments. And then if there isn't, we want to specify how to use the app and then return. Now, so far we've been using printline, which prints this text to the value and then appends a line carriage, new line at the end of it. In this case, we're going to use ePrintline, and that's a separate channel used for errors. It doesn't really make any difference for us since everything is going to come out in the terminal, but printline actually produces program output, whereas ePrintline is a separate channel that only prints out errors and logs and can be used to segregate the two types of outputs in scenarios. And this is very similar to using console log or console error in TypeScript. So just to adhere to best practices, let's stick with ePrintline when we're printing out errors so it doesn't pollute the main standard output stream. Then we want to create the actual path to the JSON file that we want to parse, which would be the second variable because it's index-based numbering. arg0 would be the first one. arg1 is the second variable, which in this example down here would be thing. And then, pardon me, we're going to create a match statement against the file system method read to string. of this path. So the file system module is going to look at the path. So in this case, we could say src src good.json. It's going to take this argument, put it in there, and read everything in that file as a string. If println content. So if it reads the content, then we just want to print the content out. And if it doesn't, then let's print an error of eprint failed to read the file. Okay? And now let's run cargo run good.json. So the error we're getting is that I didn't use a macro, I just said println. So now let's try it again. And it says the content variable, content, that I'm passing into println needs to be a string literal. So my understanding of this is that JSON data in a file, like the contents of the file, are in JSON format or file format or whatever format it is. It's not a string. And println only handles string, so we can't do this. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use our package here, which is cert.json, cert.json. I would look up how to pronounce this. And we're going to create a match case against it. So we're going to use a from string method on this package that is going to create a value. And then we're going to pass a reference into the content that we're getting back from read to string. And then if that works, we will get JSON out, which we can then print. And if it doesn't, then we'll say, look, the JSON was invalid. And if we print the JSON, we have to turn it into a string, because you can't just print JSON directly. So we're going to use the toStringPretty method on the cert.json package, and then pass in a reference to the JSON that we've got. So let's try this again. Let's save the file. And we've got JSON. Perfect. Now let's try it with some bad, like broken JSON, and see if it says, look, invalid JSON expected a semicolon, which is why I can't do it. So this path is running correctly. This path is running correctly. If we type the file name wrong, it says no such file in the directory, which is different from failed to read the file. So maybe if it was bad.csv, then failed to read the file because it can only read JSON files. And then let's rename that back to JSON. And let's make sure that it works. Perfect. And before I publish this code, let's make sure everything works one last time. Perfect. Now, the reason that you would want to parse JSON is the same reason you would want to use JSON stringify in a TypeScript application. Normally, my experience of this is having to pass data over HTTP communication. So you need to stringify it before you can pass it into the body. And sometimes you also want to deal with logging, where you have an object with a bunch of data in it, but you can't just print the object into your console. So then you stringify it so that you can read like nested values in the object and understand what's gone wrong. And same thing for if you need to like pass data into a database and it requires JSON, then you want to be able to parse it. Yeah, those are the likely reasons you will end up using this package, and that's how you write a JSON parser. Cool.